Okay, so welcome to the Node.js Community TSC meeting for April 11th, 2018. As always, we'll be following our standard agenda, which starts out with the announcements. So does anybody have any announcements for this week? If nobody else has any announcements, I have one.
Sorry, I have one. Just that, just announcing that Evan Lucas has stepped down from the TSC to become TSC Emeritus. And I think the universal sentiment is we are grateful to have had him on the TSC for the time that he was here.
Great. Yes. Thanks for all your service, and hopefully we'll still see him around the project and being active. The other announcement I had is May is the time for TSC elections for the TSC chair and TSC director. So the proposed schedule that I had was that we open nominations either April 16th or earlier. I just picked April 16th, so that gives us two weeks. And then actually open the vote on May 1st, looking to close the vote 2 weeks after that. And, that gives us, a little extra time if we need to give people more time to vote before the end of May. So I just wanted to give that as an announcement, see if that sounds reasonable to everybody or not.
I'm hearing my headset shaking my head, yes.
Okay. So yeah, unless I hear any objections either now or through follow-up, we'll assume that that's the schedule and we'll go with it. Any other announcements from people? No? Okay, so let's move on to what we have in our agenda. So we have two issues, I think, which are related and possibly worth treating together. One is 19827, which is add documentation on porting from buffer arg usage. And then the one that's sort of driving that, I believe, is the tracking issue for runtime deprecation of buffer constructor 19079. So I don't know if any of the people who are here today have a good update on those two, or want to lead the discussion for, I guess, at least 19827, why that's on the agenda this week.
So that was put on there by Nikita, and he's not here this week. So unless somebody else knows how to frame this and push it forward, I suspect that we may want to talk about this in the issue tracker itself. It doesn't look anybody from the TSC except for Matteo and Nikita have weighed in on the issue yet, and it's been open for a week.
Right. So I guess it's a request for people to comment and review in the issue tracker at this point. And we'll leave the discussion on that front.
I'll go ahead and mention TSC in it just so that it pops up in people's notifications. We'll see if that does anything.
It's a good idea. Okay, so 19079. Just going to see, I know we're leaving that on the thing, if there's anything new.
Yeah, so
go ahead.
Yeah, so on the first checkbox, the drafting the concise statement as to why we're doing this, I came up with a stub of a FAQ document, and someone pointed out that Anna had already written up a considerably more detailed one, still incomplete, but a lot more than, way more than what I wrote. So it's on my to-do list to sort of edit, put things together, et cetera, but if other people, this went out privately to the TSC mailing list. If other people on TSC want to edit or offer material, it would be really helpful. I think we really need to be able to articulate why we're doing this. We need to be able to do that, or else not do it. But since we've decided to do it, we need to be able to clearly and concisely articulate why. So that's moving forward slower than I would like, but if anybody wants to pitch in and help, that would be awesome. Landing the runtime deprecation on master, that happened. That was, we're only deprecating in code that is outside of the node modules directory. So I just checked that box just now because that is a thing that is done. The upgrade guide, I think that was the issue that we just skipped over, right? That was the previous issue we talked about, if I'm not mistaken.
I think that's, yeah.
Yeah, documentation on porting from buffer arg usage. Yeah, so that would be an upgrade guide. So yeah, Nikita and Anna expressed willingness to do parts of it. Michael Zazo proposed upgrade guides in the first place. Looks like Mateo has weighed in, but yeah, that document needs to be written. Yeah, and then the rest of the items we can probably punt to next week, but we'll need Nikita to talk about identifying important public modules that need patches and submitting those patches. That's underway, but I don't have a good idea, and I don't think anybody else here does, although feel free to raise your hand or interrupt me right now if I'm wrong. I don't think anybody here has a good idea of how far along we are, other than in the grand scheme of things, probably not as far as we'd like to be. And then there's getting the word out, which we're kind of doing right now. So still a lot to do on this. And most of it is documentation and communication work, which is really easy to not do. And, let's do it.
Agreed. In terms of, you said you have it on your agenda to push that forward. Is that somewhere that people can collaborate on it with you, or is there a URL to? I'm just looking if there's a link in there to.
So no, not yet. Right now, so I initially sent it around privately to the TSC as a gist,
yeah.
and I wanted to just get some feedback, and and I wanted to sort of just get agreement from the other members of the TSC that we would that it was okay to make this public and to work on it in a pull request or something like that, or a Google Doc or something. Just because there are it's conceivable that in the process of writing and editing this, we could reveal security issues in existing packages that been disclosed publicly. So that's why I didn't put the initial draft somewhere public. I wanted Nikita at least, and probably others, to just look it over and make sure that they don't feel like it gives away too much about what's out there.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I also think just maybe a non-public Google Doc or something might help if you just invited the TSC members, then they could at least chime in with the text writing and editing or whatever.
Yeah. And I mean, I want to tread carefully here, but I do think it's important to communicate that, a big challenge here is communicating the significance of the security concerns without communicating, the nature of, without giving away too much, basically.
Right.
And it's there is a significant number significant number of people in the community, including some influential people who are unlikely to ever believe that this is something that needs to happen until stuff that we can't really talk about is talked about. We can't talk about right now. Let's talk about
right.
But I'll stop talking now.
Okay, so I think that's pretty good coverage to where it is in terms of the people we have, at least. Anybody else got anything to add before we move on? No? Okay, so the next things we have under Node.tsc is the tracking issue for the board updates. There's no board update this week. I see, Michael, you added an update on V8 currency. Do you just want to talk to that? Anything you want to add?
Who?
Michael, I see. Targos. I guess I see that he's not actually here, just that he updated the doc, which threw me off for a second. So he updated the doc saying that V8 6.6 landed on master today. And we're waiting for a patch from the V8 team to make it compatible with the upcoming V8 6.7 so that we have the option to update if we need to. The other one, which I updated beforehand, is NAPI. So we have backports in progress for 8.x and 6.x. The thing I should mention on 6.x is there's been some discussion about how that should land or not land, or whatever the discussion with Miles in the end came to, he's okay with it landing, but that we should land it as experimental as opposed to fully supported. And, I think that makes sense as well in terms of the code is, there had to be changes made in terms of landing that code in 6, and it's a fairly large change. So giving it some time to bake in experimental probably makes sense before it goes to non-experimental. The one issue is that, typically in our maintenance cycle of LTS, we wouldn't necessarily, put in a Semver minor. So we probably will need to come back and discuss, are we willing to make an exception in this case because we think it's worthwhile, in terms of adoption, helping, NAPI be adopted to do something like that. I mean, I think we've done that, and we've made those kind of decisions in the past to say, we've got a process, but let's actually tweak the process because we think it's the right thing to do. And, this is sort of a heads up to maybe think about that because the discussion will come back later on, I think. Any other questions on that one? Otherwise, I'm going to look to see who we have in terms of other initiatives.
I'd like to update on OpenSSL.
Yep, Rod, go ahead.
So I've just had trouble amongst everything else I'm doing with build to find time to update that doc that I've been pushing in the TSC repo. So it's not actually up to date with regard to the current status. So I'll fill you in here and still try and get that doc done before 10 goes out so that we can have a proper agreement on it. So OpenSSL 1.10 is now on master, and the latest test release of that James pushed out for 10 was using it, or is using it. It doesn't have backward compatibility with 1.02, which is something that I did propose in the doc. So you can't compile the current master against the dynamically linked 1.02. However, that is something that's possible to add later on if people complain and someone shows up to do the work. I think the current assessment is that it's a lower priority than I initially proposed to get it done, because there are lots of distros out there already shipping 1.10. So the idea is let's go out with just 1.10 and no backward compat, and let's see if anyone complains. We don't have FIP support, which was something that I covered in that doc. The one thing that is a little bit awkward is the ASM, the assembly support. So there's new assembler toolchain requirements for 1.10 that are a little bit awkward. So particularly on Windows, you need to install the right version of the assembler to get the assembly built at compile time. So we've been discussing it on GitHub. I don't know where it is today. I haven't looked, but what's been proposed is having both a flag in vcbuild.bat and also configure, where you have to, if you don't have the right version of the assembly program for your platform, then you have to opt in to no assembly support. And so otherwise it just does it silently, and OpenSSL compiles with no assembly support, and you get a pretty suboptimal version of OpenSSL. It's quite slow. So we're making it so that you have to opt into that. You have to say explicitly, yes, I want that. No ASM in my OpenSSL build, rather than just silently falling back to it. Because otherwise people are much more likely to just do that when they're compiling Node for themselves, and they'll get a suboptimal build. So, I mean, there's an issue. I don't know I can't remember what the number is, but if you want to weigh into that one. Other than that, everything's on track for 1.10, and then an upgrade to 1.11 during the 10 current cycle. Any questions?
So the 102 backwards compatibility with dynamically linked libraries, is that mostly going to be useful for bundlers, distros?
That was my original contention. There was that there's particularly old distros that only ship 1.02. It's going to be awkward for them to ship a new node. However, the fact is they don't do that anyway. They don't ship newer node. It's the way to get newer node. You either compile it yourself, download it from Node.js.org, or use the node source Linux distributions to get it on an older platform, older Linux. And we, in all of those places, it's statically linked anyway. So I'm not, the target user for that is questionable. I was poking around various modern distros, and they're all shipping 1.10, which is to me a little bit strange since it's not an LTS OpenSSL, but since there's no other option, I guess it has to make sense.
Fair enough. Yeah, leaving it till it's someone asks for it seems like a reasonable idea if it's work.
Shiaki says it's probably not going to be a ton of work, but what it will mean is that you don't get some features in your node binary. For example, TLS 1.3 support. There's a bunch of new things we have to turn off if you compile against 1.02.
So that means you could write an app that works with one version of Node that doesn't work when you go use the dynamically linked version.
Yes, that's true. But there's a couple of cases with crypto that's the case anyway.
Right. Okay.
And also we've got no crypto versions of Node as well.
Sure. Okay. Makes sense.
One quick question. Are we set in our builds in terms of all the platforms that had assembly before still have assembly now?
As of yesterday, we are. This is one comment I made that the last test build, I haven't confirmed, but it would have gone out with no assembly because we were compiling on Linux with Dev Toolset 2, which has an older AR command that wouldn't have been compatible. So I presume it would have gone out with no assembly. And that would have been done silently without us even knowing on the output. So that's one of the reasons I'm keen on getting that opt-in flag into configure.
Okay, and that'll confirm that. So I'm just curious, like what, so say for other platforms, is the 4.9.4 compiler have the pieces that you need, or?
Yeah, so it's still pretty old. So it was just Dev Toolset 2 that was the problem. I think the one after that is probably okay. I think, yeah, if you just do, look, I'll drop a note into build for you, Michael, with the issue link where Shiaki outlined the versions. On Mac OS, it's Xcode 4 and above. For Windows, you've got to download NASM. And on Linux, you've got to have, I think it's AR version 2.25 or LLVM version something or other. I don't know. But yeah, I'll drop a link for you in build on IRC.
I guess any other questions on that one? No. Okay, Jeremiah, I don't know if you have any updates on the ones that you're championing.
No updates as well.
Okay, I think here, let me just click on the link here to find the issue, make sure I'm not forgetting anybody who is here. If you are, speak up, but I think otherwise, James Miles, Rod, Anna, James. No, so I think that's it. So unless we have other things to add to the agenda, we'll move on to the question and answer. I'm looking at the live chat. I see no questions. So if anybody is watching and has any questions, this is your chance to ask them. We give a few seconds. Okay, assuming that all I have to do is just look at the live chat. Doesn't seem like we have any questions this week. So I think that's the end of our agenda for today. I will stop the stream. Just hold on.